Here are the highlights from the latest episode of Free Talk Live. Visit freetalklive.com for the full episode.
Los Angeles City Council voted 13-0 to create a vaccination requirement, according to Deadline.com. That'll require people to show proof of at least partial vaccination against COVID to enter most public indoor spaces in the city, including restaurants, bars, gyms, concert venues, movie theaters, and even retail establishments.
That's so dumb.
So they're going even further than New York City, because I believe you could still go and go to the grocery store in New York City. So from what I've heard, they're only restricting the sort of non-essential activities,
like
type
entertainment
things.
stuff.
You mean you don't get starved to death for not having the COVID passport?
Well,
in
not
New
yet,
York?
apparently.
Not yet.
I also heard, I thought I heard New Orleans was
wouldn't surprise
one
me.
of the other, but I don't have anything to corroborate that.
Well, we know that Louisiana statewide put in a mask mandate a couple of weeks ago. COVID-19 would be eradicated, said Councilman Mitch O'Farrell, if we had mass vaccinations across the country and across the world.
Citation needed.
Yeah, even though we've seen, very high vaccinated places that are still getting all kinds of infections.
Are you tribe institution or tribe I will decide for myself? And if you get tribal about it, then you're a terrible person for not making the decision that I've made. And to be fair, that goes both ways. Sure, I might not think as much of you if you decided to get that vaccination, but I'm not going to give you a hard time over it. Look, you made your decision. You decided for yourself what you were going to do, and I'm not going to be like, you're a terrible person because you made a different decision.
But a lot of them are saying we're terrible people, specifically accusing us of being murderers, that we're, causing some sort of an epidemic. It's all our fault, that bad things should happen to us. Now, the government guys, they're a little more cautious, more so than some of these randos on Twitter or other, social medias who are literally calling for, off with their heads. Those unvaccinated people are evil. City Attorney Mike Feuer in Los Angeles has endorsed the idea that he calls no shots, no admission. In an article on Medium this week that he wrote, he said, quote, "Those who reject that responsibility should temporarily lose some of society's privileges until their reckless behavior no longer endangers the rest of us."
I'm a dental hygienist for 15 years, and since the pandemic began, our state of Maine was shut down for 9 weeks, and that was the only time that, I took off willingly because I couldn't wait to get back to work. And I've been working about 40 hours a week throughout the state of Maine, and I received the message this morning that if we are not vaccinated by September 15th, we no longer have a job.
Is this like a small family kind of clinic, or are you working for a corporate dental agency?
This is a temping agency who I have immense respect for. They're just following what they're told by the governor of our state. She put a mandate through.
Sorry, this is a mandate by Maine's governor to what? Just temp agencies, or is this all businesses?
All healthcare workers in the state of Maine must be vaccinated by October 15th, or they can no longer resume their position of employment.
The Rutherford Institute recently posted some documents to assist people, and you could just type that into a web browser, the Rutherford Institute documents.
The Rutherford Institute,
yeah,
thank you.
They put some documents up there to help people. It's like a form letter that you can, fill in the blanks. It's like Mad Libs, and then a PDF document as well that, sort of gives you how you can go about claiming a religious exemption. And, you might consider presenting that to your employer, because it's my understanding that all of these mandates do contain a religious exemption. I'm not sure about Maine. I haven't read that. And
did you say this was a governor's order that this is based on?
Yes, this is the governor's order, Governor Janet Mills.
Is there still a so-called state of emergency there in Maine?
No, there's not. Interesting you should mention that, because that, I think, was overlooked by her and her administrators, because that lapsed. How convenient. That lapsed 6 days ago. and I believe it was 6 days ago. So now the vaccine is mandated for all health professionals, which I have a 10-year-old daughter. My husband works for himself. It's not a great situation to lose my job, but I'm standing up for what I believe in.
Our town is divided. It's one of the most affluent communities in the state of Maine. Our school district, depending on who you talk to nationwide, our high school, I think, was ranked number 1 or top 5 or something in the nation. The unfortunate problem and what divided our town, like many towns and cities throughout the United States, happened right around, unfortunately, the George Floyd incident. Our superintendent sent a letter out to the community. 5 times in the letter kept referencing white supremacy in our town. I believe statistically our town is like 95 to 98% white. I wasn't aware of a lot of these things were going on at that time because we were new to the community.
Mm-hmm.
And, our child was in kindergarten at that time. So throughout the year, I was being a good soldier, so to speak, metaphorically speaking, because, I'm former military and my family is, and I was doing what everybody was asking. When I say that, I was never wearing a mask. I'm on the highway, just FYI, if I lose you, and I apologize. But I never wore a mask, and to date, I have never wore a mask this entire pandemic.
Nice.
I've randomly been tested for COVID 5 separate times on my own, have never tested positive. Thank you, God, first and foremost. But that said, the reason I'm making that point is I have not contracted the virus. I'm a middle-aged man. I don't have any prior underlying health conditions. I'm not saying the virus is not real. Absolutely. But it's not real to the extent that people have been gaslit and fearful. You are teaching CRT in our schools. No, we're not. I suggest
critical race theory.
Lied to me. Correct. You have lied to me multiple times. I've asked you if you are reading these books in our school. You finally admitted to it. I've read the book. I know what it means. I know the things that you're pushing. You're pushing for a Black Lives Matter week in our school system. I said, I want the Hells Angels and the KKK taught in our schools. Are you serious? I said, no, I'm not serious. But BLM, Jeff, under their mission statement, which has been taken down, you need to resign because you are inherently racist as a middle-aged white man. I assume you own a home, which is public information.
Scott, it sounds like you're doing a good job holding these bureaucrats as accountable as you can. I think that it's a lot of wasted effort, though, because ultimately they're going to do whatever they want to do, and they don't care what you think. They get the money regardless of whether you're happy or not. I think the best thing you can do is get your kid out of those government schools.
Yeah, here's the real question. Why on earth are you sending people that you love to an indoctrination camp? I mean, you personally know that this is an indoctrination camp. Like, you've seen the receipts. You know for sure. You know for a fact this is what they're doing to my children. Why are you letting them?
Because my wife, so to be fully transparent, I'm a middle-aged white guy, but I'm Scottish and Irish. My wife is Jewish. Our son, obviously, is both of us. Obviously, he's the better version of us. She doesn't believe these things are going on.
Yeah, well, there's this saying that, you should back the play of your people even if you're not sure you agree with it tactically. And I'm going to try to do that tonight. It's not always easy to do. But there's a protest scheduled by liberty activists over at Fokine Great, that restaurant in New Hampshire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the one that made international headlines a couple of years ago over the name of the restaurant causing controversy, and the government of Keene, New Hampshire, which happens to be where we broadcasted the show from, targeting the restaurant and trying to prevent it from getting a sign permit, for instance.
Yes, of course, they've been great. They're great people.
They are great.
But they scheduled a protest. I'm not sure I agree with 100%, but I will tell you about it and when it's happening and everything anyway.
Okay,
so
what is it?
Like I like to call it a protest against whining, which sounds good. That sounds like something I can support, but I think it's written up more like a protest against protest signs, if that makes sense, which I'm not really against, but
I saw some sort of a graphic. Somebody passed it to me, and I'm not sure where. I'm trying to find it now, and I don't know where it is. But I saw a graphic that... Oh, here it is. It's called Sign Off. And it says, join us for an act of performance protest. It is the national chapter of poop, P-O-O-P, people offended by offended people. They're saying right now, we're going to mandate the vaccine to go indoors and do things, and then it's going to start getting cold in the fall, and they're going to say, well, looks like people are still getting sick, because people will still be getting sick, as we've seen even the vaccinated can still pass this thing. So people will still get sick, and so in the fall they'll say, flu season's kicking in here. We're going to just have to shut down the economy again. I mean, look, you people didn't get enough vaccinations. There's still 10% of you, or whatever it is in Los Angeles, 15% of you didn't get the vaccine, so it's all your fault. You know, you'd still have your business if you just got vaccinated.
You know, these poor mayors and governors, if only they had any power to stop this from happening. If only they could just not do it.
Again, I reiterate, the masks didn't work. The lockdowns didn't work. The vaccine didn't work. All three of them, right? And when I say it didn't work, I mean people who've gotten the vaccine, both doses, even up to 3 doses now, have all come down with COVID.
So you got it backwards, Peakless. They have the power to not do anything, but that's not really power is about, you know.
That was the sarcasm.
Yeah.
If only they had some. If only they could do something about this. Unfortunately, I mean, they're just a mayor or a governor. They couldn't, just not do this thing.
Yeah, the power's all about wielding it and showing how much power they have and getting away with it, because they will. Those who remember the beginning of the so-called pandemic last year, remember San Francisco was probably the most locked down of all of the United States cities. Although, Captain, you had an update from Australia where they've had the military out enforcing COVID restrictions, lockdowns.
Yeah, and, well, the update is they're going to send more military. That's the update.
Shocker.
Yeah, more military because reasons?
Because it's still spreading?
Well,
it's
obviously, it's not that what we're doing is a bad idea. We're just not doing it hard enough. Do it harder, faster, with more guns.
Lockdown there in various parts of Australia.
People have to notify their local authorities, when they go somewhere. They're not allowed to go, more than 3 kilometers from home or something like that. They have to tell, they can only go to the store during certain hours, if that. It is basically
prison.
Prison. What's the word I'm looking for when they call in the military to shut down a city?
Martial law.
Martial law. It's basically martial law.
Yep.
And so, because they're also super military lockdown, the cases are still spreading because, the masks didn't work, the lockdowns didn't work, and the vaccine didn't work. Cases are still spreading. So somehow, calling in more military is going to do something.
They're going to shoot
it?
the virus.
Well, when it comes to the government, the answer is always less freedom. Sure enough, there are some people who, for specific reasons that even they will admit to, cannot get a vaccine. Like, it's too dangerous for them to get vaccinated. Even they will say that. And you're protecting them by not letting them go to the grocery store.
That's what he's saying.
You are protecting these people by starving them to death.
Oh, I'm sure
How
somebody
compassionate.
will pick up food for them. You can always hire a person to do your grocery shopping, as long as you can afford to do that.
Right.
Proof of vaccination will be required for all customers and staff, which is another interesting aspect of this. This wasn't really covered in any of the other news. I mean, it just sort of makes sense that they would do this in a sort of crazy totalitarian state kind of way, but it just hadn't been covered up until this point, that these mandates that require you to have a vaccine in order to go indoors and do things, well, of course, they would also require every employee at those businesses to also be vaccinated. So if you want to keep your job in San Francisco and likely Los Angeles and New York City and New Orleans and so on, then you will also have to get a vaccine.
I'm not sure where this is, but this is from the article I brought in from scmp.com about the military in Australia. It says officials also reported 2 deaths, 2 men in their 90s, taking the total deaths in the latest outbreak.
Are you telling me men in their 90s died?
That's yes, correct. 2 men in their 90s, taking the total deaths in the latest outbreak to 36.
Ooh.
A total of 374 cases are in hospitals with 62 in intensive care. People make fun of me because I'm still on the Facebook. I've gotten rid of Twitter. I've gotten rid of the major social media. I no longer have a YouTube account. I mean, there's accounts that I've started that still live on, but I'm not active on the YouTube at all. And so, it's been a slow migration for me. But also, I've sort of learned the lessons of early adoption, right? And that is, I'll let other people run into all the problems first, and then, okay, all right, seems like it's going. Seems like folks are, at least making moves. And plus, Facebook sucks, man. It really does. Yeah. It's horrible. It's horrific.
So Matrix is more of a Facebook replacement then?
No, it's a chat room.
Yeah,
it's a chat. Multiple rooms, different topics.
But now I'm on.
So like back in the days of IRC?
Yeah, think about it like IRC, but maybe a more modern iteration of that.
So what I'm doing is I'm diversifying my social media presence, right? So instead of having a singular social media presence, I'm now on the Matrix. I'm now on Mastodon, and then also Telegram. The Facebook still exists, but
Well, and I really do think that we're finally reaching the point where we can get onto these, like, we've sort of tested this bridge, it'll support your weight. Like, we've gone into the problems that the early adoption has, and I think we're actually reaching that point where, like, okay, well, if you want to get off of YouTube, you can get on Library and Odyssey.
Yep. I noticed a pattern. We're not even counting Adam Kokesh, but Mark Zuckerberg, with all that he does for us, and then you had the bloomin' idiot, Blumenfeld on the L.A. City Council, and you're talking about death camps, and noted that the CDC had some possible idea about camps for people with COVID or other things, and that's headed by, is it Rachel Walensky? And then you had a caller earlier in the program whose wife was aligned with the COVIDiocy thing, and all of those are Jewish people. So I'm wondering why Jewish people are so supportive of the COVID lockdown kind of stuff. But that's not what I'm calling about.
Well, my girlfriend's Jewish, and she's against it. So I don't know if you can make a statement about Jewish people believing a certain thing. They're all individuals, so they can think for themselves.
They are. There's just patterns. I make note of every pattern I come across, not just this one. And there's a definite pattern.
Hold on. So, if you're going to point that out, the Jews of New York have been the most rebellious against being shut down.
That's true. The blacks and the Jews in New York City are the two groups that are the least likely to get vaccinations.
We did a story on the Hasidic Jews holding a wedding during the heart of the largest lockdown, or the most lockdowny part.
Mayor Jim Kenney in Philadelphia had this to say. He said, I'm upset. This amazes me that this is the most simple thing to do to keep yourself safe and your family safe and your community safe, and people still refuse to do it. Getting vaccinated isn't just a personal decision. It's a decision that affects all of us.
What's this guy's name?
Jim Kenney.
Hey, Jim, there's no evidence that any of that made any difference.
Yeah, gee, it's almost as if you didn't convince us of that. It's almost as if there was no evidence of what you're claiming.
So, that's pretty much the stories as far as the mandates that are coming down. That's this week. You expect more for next week.
And that's the thing. Like, do you demand evidence in the form of actual data, or is it sufficient that an expert told you so? Like, it really does come down to that. If it's enough that an expert says to do it...
The government-approved expert.
Of course.
Because my doctor says different things.
Those are the only qualified experts.
Yeah.
Well, you can tune in daily to Free Talk Live for the next episode of Draconian Zombie Lockdown.
Did you guys see the video of, it was like Mount Vernon or something like that, where there's this doctor that speaks for 6 minutes to a city council?
I've seen the I haven't watched the video. I've seen it pop up several times on different social medias, noting that it has been taken down from YouTube, but it is up on Library.
The 10 stages of genocide. Now, genocidewatch.net, I can't say I agree with what they're going to...
Sorry, that's just a hilarious URL.
Well, I don't think they consider it funny.
No, I know they don't. I live in a world where there's a genocidewatch.net.
Well, there have been multiple genocides, and so some people have looked at these genocides, and they've figured...
Sure there'll be more.
And they've noticed some similarities between how things go with genocides. And so, according to Dr. Gregory H. Stanton, genocide is a process that develops in stages. He's identified 10 of them that are predictable but not inexorable. At each stage, preventative measures can stop it. The process is not linear. Stages may occur simultaneously. Logically, later stages must be preceded by earlier stages, but all stages continue to operate throughout the process. So they're ongoing throughout the whole idea. Now, in this rundown of the 10 stages of genocide, we go through the stages, and then he gives what he considers to be preventative measures, many of which we would disagree with, like things like prosecuting people for so-called hate crimes and forbidding hate symbols. So people that support freedom of speech, even though we may not agree with the ideas of racism or hate or whatever, we also see that prohibiting speech, even the ugly speech, is a very dangerous thing.
If you are trying to persuade me that these vaccines are safe and effective and that I really should, for my own benefit and for the benefit of others, get this, that is a completely different thing than when you are saying you are not allowed to let this person into your store because they didn't get vaccinated. Right.
Yeah, so I don't see this as a potential genocide against libertarians, because libertarians are sort of on both sides of this issue. Some of them have chosen to get the vaccine. Some of them are advocating for the vaccine.
On this issue, there is a libertarian and an authoritarian side.
There's no doubt about that. But what I'm talking about here with the idea of genocide is that if there's going to be a genocide, and I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it could. Yeah. And we should look at the steps and see, what does it take to get there.
There's one going on in China right now, isn't there? The Uyghurs?
Yeah. But purportedly, they're definitely locking them into prisons. Yeah. And so-called re-education camps.
Taking their organs.
So, but what I'm saying here is that they're likely to target the unvaccinated. And that includes libertarians. It includes, a lot of blacks. It includes a lot of
a bunch of poor
conservatives.
A bunch of poor people.
And maybe a very small number of liberals. But it seems like most of them are on board with the vaccinations.
You can tell when the Republican Party never takes blame for anything, okay?
Isn't that your party, Jerome?
What?
Isn't that your party? The Republican Party?
Hey, any party that Lindsey Graham belongs to ain't my party, okay?
All right.
Any party that Donald Trump belongs to ain't my party.
All right, so what's the critique?
That party. No, 20 years, man. Well, what do they want? How they going to criticize him?
What's going on?
Well,
hold on.
Geez, if we'd only had a Democrat in office some point there.
Wait a minute. Hold on. Just bring me up to speed. What are the Republicans saying? What are you responding to? I know you presume we always know.
They don't want him to leave Afghanistan. They think this is a bad move. Yeah, it may be a bad move, but damn it, 20 years?
Wait a minute. Okay. Let's slow down for just a moment here, because Republicans, like Democrats, are individuals, and they don't all believe the same exact thing. So I think it's worth pointing out that Donald Trump also pulled troops out of Afghanistan, and he was against having that war continue. And so Biden is actually continuing the Donald Trump policy and finishing the Donald Trump policy of making the right choice of pulling troops out of Afghanistan.
Hey, he did it, and they kept their big fat mouth shut. Now they're talking now.
No, they didn't, actually.
So we were both right in terms of Afghanistan. So Trump dropped more bombs per year, and Obama dropped more bombs total.
Which would suggest that Trump would have dropped more bombs had he had 8 years in office to do it, like Obama did, right?
Well, and if I remember correctly, I read if that chart tells what the presidents prior to them do, it seems that the amount of bombs just increases presidency over presidency, no matter who's in the chair, Democrat or Republican.
That's a good point.
The amount of bombing just continues to grow, and the value of the dollar continues to plummet.
Yeah, it vacillates up and down, but the trend is largely upward.
Well, so far, Biden, I don't know how many bombings he's been involved in, because again, they bomb outside of Afghanistan, obviously. They bomb, Syria and bomb elsewhere. So, it'll be interesting to see how he shakes out, because he's obviously got 3 whole, more years to go as far as starting potential new wars are concerned.
True.
I mean, he's acting like he understands that Afghanistan, and to his credit, the words coming out of his mouth, at least, which, politicians lie, but the words coming out of his mouth are conciliatory regarding Afghanistan.
Wait, are they coherent at this point?
Regarding Afghanistan, he has been quite coherent, saying that he claims that he was against having troops there during the Barack Obama administration, but he couldn't do anything about it because he was just the vice president.
Citation needed
at that
there,
time.
buddy.
It's impressive for old creepy nose Joe.
Number 3, discrimination. A dominant group uses law, custom, and political power to deny the rights of other groups. Boy, is that happening now. The powerless group may not be accorded full civil rights, voting rights, or even citizenship. The dominant group is driven by an exclusionary ideology that would deprive less powerful groups of their rights.
The science.
The ideology advocates monopolization or expansion of power by the dominant group. It legitimizes the victimization of weaker groups. Advocates of exclusionary ideologies are often charismatic, expressing resentments of their followers. It's just for the children. We've got to help people. Expressing resentments of their followers, attracting support from the masses. Examples include the Nuremberg Laws of 1935 in Nazi Germany, which stripped Jews of their German citizenship and prohibited their employment by the government and by universities. Governments are now saying if you don't get a vaccination, you cannot work for them.
Yep. Well, and all the mandates that shut down businesses and lockdowns and all that kind of crap.
I got to say, the "it's for the children" narrative irritated me when they actually had an argument for why that would make sense. But with this, there just literally is no argument for this being for the children.
No, not at all.
Now, if you were to say this is for the elderly, that would make sense. Or even, okay, this is for the unvaccinatable.
But it
At
still
least
doesn't
it
make
makes
sense because then the elderly can just stay home if they're worried about getting this thing.
You just heard highlights from the latest episode of Free Talk Live. You can download full episodes, subscribe to our podcast, listen live, and more, all for free at freetalklive.com.